Every morning at sunrise, 78-year-old Joseph Crow Feather walked to his garden with a small leather pouch. His movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial, as he sprinkled what looked like cigarette ashes across his tomato plants, corn stalks, and bean rows. His son Michael watched from the house, his jaw clenched in embarrassment. "Dad's losing it," he muttered to his wife Sarah. "The neighbors are starting to talk." And they were talking. The suburban community buzzed with whispers about the crazy old Indian who was contaminating his garden with tobacco waste. Mrs. Henderson from next door made sure everyone knew her opinion. "It's disgusting," she declared at the neighborhood association meeting. "Probably some primitive superstition. This is 2025, not 1825. Michael's cheeks burned with shame. He'd worked so hard to fit in, to be seen as just another successful businessman in their upscale neighborhood. His father's morning ritual felt like a spotlight on everything he'd tried to leave behind. "Dad, you need to stop," Michael finally confronted Joseph one evening. "People think you're different." Joseph's weathered hands stilled on his evening cup of tea. "Different how, son? You know what I mean, the ash thing. It's weird, embarrassing." The old man's eyes held a sadness that seemed to reach back generations. Embarrassing to whom? The situation escalated when Mrs. Henderson filed a complaint with the Homeowners Association, claiming the ash spreading was unsanitary and culturally inappropriate for a modern neighborhood. Michael felt the walls closing in. His colleagues at the law firm had started making subtle comments. His daughter Emma came home from school, asking why kids were calling Grandpa the Ash Man. "Enough is enough," Michael declared, storming into the garden where his father knelt among the plants. "This stops today. I won't let you embarrass our family anymore." Joseph looked up, dirt under his fingernails, the leather pouch still in his weathered hands. "Embarrass? Is that what you think this is? What else would you call it? Spreading cigarette waste around like some kind of—" Michael caught himself before the cruel words escaped. "Like some kind of what, Michael?" His father's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of wounded dignity. Michael snatched the pouch from his father's hands. "Whatever this is, it ends now. I'm throwing this away." As the leather pouch hit the garbage can, something inside Michael's chest cracked. His father didn't argue, didn't fight back. Joseph simply stood, brushed the dirt from his knees, and walked toward the house. That night, the old man didn't come to dinner. The next morning, there was no figure in the garden at sunrise. 3 days passed. The house felt hollow without Joseph's quiet presence at the breakfast table, without the soft sound of his moccasins on the wooden floors at dawn. Emma, Michael's 12-year-old daughter, broke the silence. "Dad, why is Grandpa so sad?" "He's just adjusting," Michael lied. "Adjusting to what? Being told his traditions are embarrassing?" The words hit like a physical blow. "Emma, you don't understand. I understand that you made Grandpa stop doing something that mattered to him because you were worried about what Mrs. Henderson thinks." That evening, Michael found his father sitting on the back porch, staring at the garden. For the first time in days, Joseph spoke. "Your great-great-grandfather planted the first corn on this land in 1825, he said quietly. "Back then, this whole area was Lakota territory." Michael felt something shift inside him. "Dad, I didn't know." "There's a lot you don't know, son. A lot I never taught you because I thought it would be easier if you could just blend in." Joseph's voice grew stronger as he continued. "That pouch doesn't contain cigarette ashes, Michael. It holds sacred tobacco blessed by our elders. For 200 years, our family has given thanks to this land every sunrise. We acknowledge that the earth feeds us, sustains us, and deserves our respect." Michael's throat tightened. "But it looks like cigarette waste to people who don't understand." "Yes." Joseph's weathered hands folded in his lap. "Your great-grandmother did this ceremony. Your grandmother. Your mother before she passed. I've done it for 50 years, never missing a sunrise. Dad, until 3 days ago." The weight of what he'd done crashed over Michael like a cold wave. "I thought you were just— I didn't realize. You saw an embarrassing old man spreading garbage in his garden. You didn't see a sacred ritual that's kept our family connected to this land for 2 centuries. Joseph stood slowly, his joints creaking. "Every morning I thank the earth for our abundance. I ask forgiveness for what we take. I promise to be good stewards of this gift we've been given." Michael's eyes burned. "The neighbors, they complained because they didn't understand, and you sided with their ignorance over your own father's truth." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a sacred fire. "I thought I was protecting our family," Michael whispered. "From what? From who we are." That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He thought about his childhood, about the stories his father used to tell before Michael started asking him to stop. Stories about their ancestors, about the sacred relationship between people and land, about ceremonies that kept the world in balance. He'd buried those memories under law school, business suits, and the desperate need to succeed in a world that often made people like him feel like they had to choose between their heritage and their future. The next morning, Michael woke before sunrise. He found his father in the kitchen, preparing coffee with the same quiet reverence he brought to everything. "Dad, I need to learn." Joseph looked up, hope flickering in his eyes like the first light of dawn. "Learn what, son?" "Everything. The ceremony, the words, the reasons why." Michael's voice cracked. "I want to understand what I almost destroyed." Joseph set down his coffee cup and smiled for the first time in days. "It's not too late." They walked to the garden together as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and rose. Joseph retrieved a new pouch from his pocket. He'd never thrown away the sacred tobacco, had simply waited for his son to come back to him. "The ceremony isn't just about the plants," Joseph explained as they knelt among the corn stalks. "It's about remembering that we're part of something larger than ourselves. The earth doesn't belong to us. We belong to the earth." Michael watched as his father's weathered hands moved with practiced grace, sprinkling the blessed tobacco while speaking words in Lakota that carried the weight of centuries. "What do the words mean?" Michael asked. "We give thanks. We ask for continued abundance. We promise to remember that every meal, every harvest, every breath is a gift." That evening, Michael called a family meeting. He looked at his wife Sarah and daughter Emma, both of whom had watched the morning ceremony from the kitchen window. "I owe you all an apology," he began. "But more than that, I owe you an explanation." He told them about their family's history, about the land that had sustained them for generations, about the sacred responsibility that came with that relationship. Emma's eyes shone with wonder. "Can I learn the ceremony too?" Sarah reached for Michael's hand. "I'd like to understand as well." When Mrs. Henderson approached Michael in the driveway the next week, he was ready. "I see your father is back to his activities," she said with disdain. "My father is conducting a sacred ceremony that my family has practiced on this land for 200 years. Michael replied calmly. "It's called giving thanks. It's unsanitary and inappropriate. What's inappropriate is your assumption that you have the right to judge traditions you don't understand." Mrs. Henderson's face reddened. "This is a civilized neighborhood." "Yes, it is. And part of being civilized is respecting your neighbor's cultural practices, especially when those practices harm no one and honor the very earth we all depend on." Word of the confrontation spread quickly through the neighborhood. But something unexpected happened. Other residents began approaching Michael with curiosity rather than complaints. "What exactly is your father doing?" asked Mr. Chen from across the street. "It seems very mindful." Mrs. Rodriguez, the high school teacher from 2 houses down, was more direct. "I've been watching your father's morning routine, and there's something beautiful about it. Would he be willing to talk to my environmental science class?" Even some of the initial critics began to see the ceremony differently once they understood its meaning. Joseph agreed to speak to Mrs. Rodriguez's class. Standing before 30 teenagers, he shared not just the mechanics of the ceremony, but its deeper meaning. "Every culture has ways of staying connected to the natural world," he explained. "This is ours. It reminds us that we're not separate from nature, we're part of it." A student raised her hand. "Why is it important to do it every day?" Joseph smiled. "Because gratitude isn't a one-time thing. The earth feeds us every day. The least we can do is say thank you." Months passed. The garden flourished under Joseph's continued care. The sacred tobacco ceremony resumed its place in the family's daily rhythm. Michael found himself looking forward to those sunrise moments with his father. The ritual had become a bridge between worlds, honoring the past while living in the present. Emma learned the Lakota words, her young voice joining her grandfather's in the ancient gratitude. Sarah researched their family history, helping to fill in gaps that generations of assimilation had created. One morning, as they knelt together in the garden, Michael asked his father a question that had been weighing on him. "Dad, how did you keep your faith in our traditions when the world seemed to be telling you they didn't matter?" Joseph was quiet for a long moment, his hands gentle on the earth. "Because I knew that hiding who we are doesn't make us safer, son. It just makes us smaller. But it's hard when people judge what they don't understand." "Yes, it is. But their ignorance doesn't diminish the truth of who we are. The sacred doesn't become less sacred because someone else can't see it." The story didn't end with one family's healing. Mrs. Rodriguez's students went home talking about indigenous wisdom and environmental stewardship. Some parents began researching their own cultural traditions around gratitude and land care. The neighborhood association, influenced by these conversations, started a community garden project that incorporated indigenous growing methods and blessing ceremonies from various cultures. Mrs. Henderson never fully embraced the change, but she stopped complaining. "Progress," Joseph noted, "sometimes comes in small steps." As harvest season arrived, the crow feather garden produced its most abundant crop in years. Michael had learned that sacred tobacco isn't fertilizer in any scientific sense, but the ceremony that surrounds it creates a mindset of care, attention, and respect that manifests in very practical ways. It's not magic, Joseph explained as they gathered corn and squash. It's relationship. When you approach the earth with gratitude instead of entitlement, you tend to take better care of what sustains you. Emma, now fluent in the morning ceremony, added her own insight. It's like saying please and thank you, but to the whole world. 1 year after the confrontation that nearly broke their family's sacred tradition, Michael stood in the garden at sunrise, watching his father and daughter perform the ceremony together. He thought about all the ways shame had shaped his life, the constant effort to hide parts of himself, to appear acceptable to people whose approval ultimately meant nothing. He thought about his daughter, who would grow up knowing her heritage was something to honor, not hide. He thought about his neighbors, many of whom now understood that different doesn't mean wrong. Most of all, he thought about his father, whose quiet dignity had survived decades of a world that often treated indigenous wisdom as primitive superstition. The sacred tobacco rose like prayers on the morning breeze, carrying gratitude to the sky and blessings to the earth. Michael closed his eyes and added his own silent thanks, not just for the land that fed them, but for a father who had never stopped believing that some things are too sacred to abandon, even when the world demands that you do.